The 1-2 again. Inside corner.
So Zack Greinke never played in a postseason game for the Kansas City Royals, but you could say he had a bit of a hand in closing out the 2015 World Series. In 2010, Greinke insinuated in the media that he wanted to be traded, leading the Royals to deal him and shortstop Betancourt to Milwaukee for Lorenzo Cain, Alcides Escobar, Jeremy Jeffress, and Jake Odorizzi, who would then be a key part of another trade a few years later that netted the Royals their dominant 2015 closer, Wade Davis. Welcome to Transaction Action. Like most teams in recent years, the 2015 Royals were not built off of a large number of trades. But they did feature two massive deals, which I alluded to in the intro, that are interconnected and without which the Royals' long postseason drought might have continued. It all starts with Zack Greinke, whose shadow looms over the 2015 season. Greinke had an up-and-down run in Kansas City. He came up as a highly touted prospect, a first-rounder who was an immediate success in the bigs, putting up a 3.8 WAR rookie year in 24 starts. But a sophomore slump in 2005 led to a lost season in 06, when Greinke would be diagnosed with depression and social anxiety disorder and miss pretty much the entire year. He even decided to quit baseball at one point. But he worked his way back with a bullpen stint in 2007 before reestablishing himself as a quality starter in 08, then becoming the best pitcher in baseball in 09, on his way to a Hall of Fame caliber career. Greinke put up an insane 10.4 WAR in 09, an electrifying season even for a team destined for less than mediocrity. This was the most valuable season in Royals history, so you can understand why the Royals would be hesitant to deal him, even if they were far from contending. Allegedly, general manager Dayton Moore wanted to keep Greinke, and the only reason he ended up making the deal was because of Zack's insistence. And by forcing Moore's hand somewhat, he may have gifted the Royals their brief path to contention mid-decade. If they hadn't made this deal, the Royals likely would have walked down the Joakim Soria path with Greinke, as they had done and would continue to do with many other players. The Royals have been notorious for holding onto players too long, then losing them in free agency or dealing them after their value has collapsed. Like a dog that wants you to throw the tennis ball, but also doesn't want to let go of it. The most egregious of these is probably Soria, an elite closer from 2007 to 2010. One of the best in baseball. But as many were saying at the time, what's the point in having an elite closer on a 95-loss team? The Royals had 4 trade deadlines and 4 off-seasons to let go of that tennis ball, but they ground their teeth down into it until it popped. They could have gotten a massive haul, but then Soria had a bad year in 2011, losing the closer job and tanking his trade value for the moment. Of course, this poor performance was due to injury. He'd have Tommy John in the offseason, miss all of 2012, and then hit free agency. Talk about transaction inaction. It's possible the Royals could have extended Greinke if they had kept him, but more than likely, this sort of scenario would have been in store for the Royals if Zack hadn't nudged them in the obvious direction. But this trade also could have turned out poorly for Moore and the Royals. The Yankees mercifully turned down a deal that would have sent Jesus Montero and Eduardo Nunez for Greinke, which would have been a disaster. Then a deal with the Nationals fell through where Moore tried to get Jordan Zimmerman, Danny Espinosa, Drew Storen, and Derek Norris. This would have been a great return, except for the fact that if you're the Royals, you want Derek Norris behind the plate for the A's in that 2014 wildcard game. In the end, they did get a haul in their deal with Milwaukee. A starting shortstop and a starting center fielder, both cost-controlled and Major League ready, a pitching prospect nearing Major League readiness, as well as a promising young bullpen arm. And addition by subtraction, because they got the Brewers to take Betancourt off their hands. This was a mutually beneficial deal as the Brewers were a contending team in need of an ace. Even if Greinke did underwhelm for them in a season and a half, they did flip him for a solid shortstop in Gene Segura, who they also then flipped for a decent starter in Chase Anderson. Meanwhile, the Royals got an elite defensive center fielder, whose bat developed enough by 2015 to put him in the MVP conversation. Escobar was no elite shortstop, but he was a very solid defender and great base runner. and replacing a consistently bad all-around shortstop like Yuniesky Betancourt with a two-war type of player is a significant upgrade. They also got Jeffress, who had promise but struggled with the Royals and ended up being traded for cash to Toronto. Jake Odorizzi immediately became one of the Royals' top pitching prospects and would be a key figure in the other massive trade that built this 2015 team. In 2012, the Royals packaged Odorizzi with top hitting prospect Will Myers and former first-round lefty Mike Montgomery, and dealt them to Tampa Bay for pitchers James Shields and Wade Davis. A lot of ink has been spilled about this deal, most of it by the excellent Rainey Jazirli of The Ringer and Grantland, etc. It was a ballsy win-now move by a team that hadn't won anything in a long time, and honestly, didn't seem like it was ready to win anything in the near future. In other words, it felt like Dayton Moore was pulling one of these. The 2012 Royals lost 90 games, but they had a lot of young talent. Salvador Perez had established himself, but top batting prospects Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas had mostly looked overmatched in their first couple years in the bigs. Would it take them 4 years of development to turn into stars like it did with Alex Gordon? And on the pitching side of the equation, there were even more questions. The 2012 rotation was terrible. First overall pick from the 2006 draft, Luke Hochevar, was now clearly a bust. They had already given up on 2009 first-rounder Aaron Crow and converted him into a mediocre reliever. 2008 first-rounder Mike Montgomery was getting absolutely demolished in both AAA and AA, as was one of their other top pitching prospects, Chris Dwyer. And 2011's top pitching prospect, John Lamb, missed all of 2012 after Tommy John surgery and struggled in rookie ball upon returning. This is all to say that this team didn't feel like it was a veteran starter away from contending, and a lot of people criticized the trade accordingly. Giving up 6 cost-controlled years of a guy Royals fans thought could be their top slugger, and 6 cost-controlled years of a guy they thought could be a consistent number 2 or number 3 starter in exchange for 2 years of an admittedly good starter and 4 years of a failed starter. Throwing Montgomery in there was just insulting. Even though he looked like he would never amount to much, he did have the first-round pedigree. There was a possibility he could have turned it around. But 2 things were true. The Royals actually were closer to contention than it may have seemed, and those prospects would never be as good as they were in people's imaginations. Myers would be a solid hitter, but never get anywhere near superstar territory. Odorizzi would also be solid, but more of a consistent back-end starter. And Montgomery would turn it around somewhat and become an okay swingman for a few seasons. Meanwhile, the Royals contended pretty much right away in 2013, winning 86 games due to big improvements from Hosmer, Cain, and Perez, an elite bullpen solidified by moving Luke Hochevar out of the rotation, and James Shields being as advertised. It's possible that year's team could have made a stronger run at the wild card if they didn't initially try to make Wade Davis as a starter happen. The Rays had kind of shown everyone what the deal with Wade was when he sucked as a starter for 3 years and then was awesome out of the pen in 2012. But the Royals had to see for themselves, giving Davis 24 brutal starts before finally moving him to the pen and then going,
"I'd say that does the trick. That'll do it. Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, I'd say that'll do it. Yeah, I'd say that would do it. Yeah, that'll help a little."
In 2014, it started to become clear that the real jewel from this deal was Davis, who became the most dominant reliever in baseball for the next few years. He was worth as much out of the pen as Shields was out of the rotation in 2014. Those 14 and 15 Royals teams were renowned for their bullpens, with the 14 squad's HDH putting up insane numbers as a trio. And even though Greg Holland would struggle due to injury in 2015, the overall bullpen was even better that year due to adding great depth pieces like free agents Ryan Madsen and Franklin Morales. A lot was made about this super bullpen concept at the time, with teams trying to copy the Royals' blueprint. It was a great postseason advantage to have 3 shutdown guys like that in the pen, but I don't think this was an intentional team-building approach. Not that teams can't be intentional about building their pens, but there's just so much variance in relievers, and they burn out quick. There's a great deal of luck involved. Sometimes bad luck, like when a 1-of-1 draft pick can't hack it in the rotation, but he ends up fortifying the pen. So I don't think that was a Dayton Moore brain genius team-building move, but I do think there was some interesting intentionality elsewhere in Moore's team-building approach. I talked about the genius of Whitey Herzog in the '82 Cardinals video, where he concocted a roster perfectly suited to the ballpark. Speed and defense guys with a pitch-to-contact rotation. These Royals teams are kind of similar in some respects. Kauffman Stadium's outfield is one of the largest in baseball by square footage. It suppresses home runs, but it increases every other type of hit. So rostering lots of speedy outfielders like Cain, Gerard Dyson, and Paulo Orlando that can cover a lot of ground out there was a very smart move. And on offense, the Royals embraced a high contact rate. A lot has been made in 2025 about playoff teams like the Brewers and especially the Blue Jays advancing deep in the playoffs due to high contact rates, and a lot of similar things were said back in 2014 and 2015 about these Royals. While other teams were embracing a 3 true outcomes approach, the Royals picked up guys who put bat to ball. The inefficiency at that point was no longer guys who can draw walks, but guys who can avoid striking out. And especially for a team in a stadium that inflates singles, doubles, and triples, getting fast guys who can put it in play is a smart move. The 2015 Royals were dead last in strikeouts, 24th in home runs, but 4th in singles, 3rd in doubles, and 6th in triples, leading to a decent 11th in slugging percentage. And they also ended up 11th in on-base percentage, despite being second to last in walks. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Royals and their inability to walk. There are many reasons the contention window didn't stay open long for Kansas City, but this is definitely one of them. Just because you don't strike out doesn't mean you can't also take walks. I mentioned this year's Blue Jays and Brewers, 2 high contact rate teams, but 2 teams who also walk. 4th and 13th in the league in walks, and 1st and 2nd in on-base percentage. So I'd give the much maligned Dayton Moore credit for this approach in building a winner, but I'd also say that many Royals fans were very frustrated, and rightly so, by the organization's indifference to plate discipline during the miserable decade leading up to their window opening, and the miserable decade since that window slammed shut. Once again, see Rainy Jazerli. He's got a lot to say about this topic, if you have like a free decade. The gist is that for most of his tenure, Moore brought in a parade of guys who utterly lacked plate discipline. Jeff Francoeur, Jose Guillen, Mike Jacobs, Uni Betancourt, Miguel Olivo, Omar Infante, Alex Rios, etc. These guys were like, if I walk, we win more games. But I never walk. And even their most successful draft picks tended not to get on base at elite rates. If we look at the leaderboard for single season on-base percentage during the Dayton Moore era, or 06 to 22, the Royals don't have a single player on the entire first page of results, 200 deep. Every single other team is represented here. The top season for a Royals player comes in all the way down at 227, with Billy Butler on basing 388 in 2010, a player drafted by the previous regime. And thus concludes me talking about the Royals' inability to walk. Okay, let's get back to those 2015 transactions. After the 2 big ones we already talked about, there aren't that many other trades. There are 2 quintessential deadline deal moves with prospects for veteran rentals. The Royals dealt their 2014 first-round draft pick, Brandon Finnegan, to the Reds for starter Johnny Cueto. Finnegan had looked good in the pen in the 2014 postseason, and he would have 1 decent year starting in Cincy while Cueto really fortified the Royals' rotation. He underwhelmed down the stretch, but had some big-time starts in the postseason. The Royals also dealt pitchers Sean Manaea and Aaron Brooks to Oakland for Ben Zobrist. This one ended up hurting a bit more for the Royals, as Manaea was a very solid starter for 6 cost-controlled years in Oakland. But I don't think anyone regrets this move. Zobrist was a perfect fit for the Royals and added great length to their lineup, and was huge for them in the postseason. Then there's a trade from 2012 when the Royals pulled off the tricky move of dealing a guy with a 7.76 ERA for a guy who'd become a very solid innings eater in the rotation for the next couple years. They dealt Jonathan Sanchez to the Rockies for Jeremy Guthrie. Now, Jeremy Guthrie had actually been almost as bad as Sanchez that year, so this was a change of scenery deal that worked out great for Guthrie and the Royals, although Guthrie would not be good in 2015. Then there's a minor deal that sent pitcher Spencer Patton to Texas in exchange for solid reliever Jason Frazier. To give you a sense of how good Kansas City's bullpen was in 2015, Jason Frazier put up a 1.54 ERA in 23 innings, and the Royals just released him in July. I mean, who needs a sub-2 ERA guy in their pen? However, it might have been a fluky good ERA, as his walk rate was very high at 5.8 per 9. The Royals also made a number of free agent signings, including Kendrys Morales, Edinson Volquez, Jason Vargas, Chris Young, Omar Infante, Alex Rios, Ryan Madsen, Franklin Morales, Chris Medlin, and Joe Blanton. Okay, now it's time to do our alternative history segment, What If They Did Nothing? We're going to imagine this roster had the Royals made none of these transactions. Okay, here's the actual numbers, and I'm going to duplicate these totals down here so you can keep track of the difference. So we lose the two guys from the Greinke deal, Escobar at short and Cain in center. We also drop free agents Infante, Rios, and Morales, and we lose the half season of Zobrist. The one guy we can add back in right away is Wil Myers, who put up 1.2 WAR in a half season that was shortened by injury. On the pitching side, we drop a lot of guys. Volquez, Guthrie, Young, Cueto, Davis, Madsen, Morales, Medlin, Vargas, Blanton, and Fraser. That's 12.2 WAR we drop right there. But we get to add back most of it with one guy, Zack, who put up 8.9 WAR in 2015. Now this relies on a fair amount of willful suspension of disbelief, as the Royals would have had to have extended Greinke beyond 2012. But if they were going to keep him beyond 2010, you'd have to expect they'd be pushing for that extension. Would Greinke have gone for it? Let's just say they get it done. Then we can also add Mike Montgomery, who put up 0.6 WAR in 16 starts. And we can add Brandon Finnegan's value from after his trade to the Reds. That leaves a lot of holes. So now we'll add back in any of the free agents that would still make sense to sign for this roster. The only free agent hitter we don't add back in is Alex Rios. With Myers set to start in right, it makes no sense to sign Rios. To be honest, it never really made any sense to sign Rios for the actual 2015 Royals. He was a clearly regressing veteran who looked pretty washed in 14. The Royals could have instead re-signed Nori Aoki, who was a consistent 350 on-base guy with an okay glove who cost $7 million less and did great physical comedy stuff like this all the time. So anyway, no Rios, but we add back in Infante, who, while not great, does fill a middle infield void at second. And we add Morales at DH. On the pitching side, we're going to add back in Volquez, Chris Young, Vargas, Madsen, Morales, and Medlin. This gives us the innings we need there, so we don't also need to add Blanton. In this scenario, some of these guys are going to have more innings come out of the pen than from the rotation, as we have 173 starts from all of these guys. So probably Montgomery and Medlin make fewer starts and more relief appearances. This bullpen is nowhere near as elite without Davis, but it's good enough, and considering that Greinke eats a lot of innings in the rotation, you aren't as reliant on a deep bullpen. So we've got to fill in shortstop, center field, and a bench spot replacing Zobrist. And with Greinke's contract, we don't have much budget to do it. Here are the salaries of the players we dropped. Just under $35 million. Meanwhile, we add the salaries of Greinke and league minimum guys Montgomery and Myers, which totals $26 million. We can sign a couple of guys, but I think we will also need to leverage some already existing assets. First off, we're going to give more playing time to role players Jarrod Dyson and Paulo Orlando. These guys both had really solid years in 2015, especially Dyson, whose outfield defense and base running were elite. Orlando was also a plus defender. They make for a good platoon to make up a chunk of the outfield innings missing, with Cain and Rios out, and with Myers only giving you a partial season. However, as solid as these two were, I doubt the Royals would have gone into the season without some other more proven option in center. So we still need to sign someone. For free agents, we're just going to look at guys who signed in the off seasons before 2014 and 2015, and we'll only look at guys who didn't re-sign with their current team. This leaves some slim pickings in center field. We're priced out of guys like Curtis Granderson in center. In fact, the only guy who really makes sense is Rajai Davis, who signed a 2-year deal with Detroit before 2014. Davis spent most of his career as a role player who was never great, but was always solid. So we'll sign him for $5 million, and he gives us 1.5 WAR in 370 plate appearances. That leaves us with a bit less than 400 plate appearances we need to make up by giving to Orlando and Dyson. Dyson will get more as the better fielder and stronger side of the platoon. I would expect these guys' WAR totals to increase with the more playing time, but for this exercise, we'll just assume that they provide replacement level value in those 400 added plate appearances. At short, I'm going to do something similar. Don't have a lot of money to spend here, and there's not many viable free agent shortstops to choose from, so let's sign Clint Barbas. who wasn't great and didn't end up putting up much playing time, but again, there's not much else. He adds 0.2 WAR and costs us 1.3 million, but only gives us 224 plate appearances. So I'm going to give the rest of the playing time at short to Christian Colon. Not a great solution, admittedly. Colon was the 4th overall pick in 2010, but never really developed into more than a decent enough backup glove. He played 141 innings at short in 2015, so we're just going to pile on some more replacement level playing time for him. Then, for our final spot, replacing Zobrist, who mainly played second, but also a bit of third and a bit of corner outfield, I'm going to call up Whit Merrifield from AAA, who can give you some similar positional versatility, and we'll assume that he'd also be replacement level. So there you go. This team actually turns out to be a little bit better than the actual 2015 Royals, so that's pretty crazy. Oh crap, here we go, back to this. The old multiverse of madness again.
Now with a tying run at third after the double by Hosmer, the infield comes in with Salvador Perez at the plate.
Let's look back for just a quick second.
To last year, Game 7, a one-run game. Giants on top by 1. Tying run at third, 2 out, 9th inning. Salvador Perez. That's hammered into left. Back near the wall. The Royals are world champions. Here he is. A chance to tie it here in the ninth. Broken back. Hosmer stays put, and that was a good hold.
Well, I suppose if you're a Royals fan, you'd happily trade Hosmer's mad dash for a Sal Perez World Series walk-off in 2014. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe for more transaction action.